What's up, guys? Today we have another 2025 NFL mock draft. This is going to be 2 rounds, and we're going to do trades this time as well. Try to spice things up. Uh, Combine just happened, so some of these guys have shot up the board, I think, quite a lot. If you look at a guy maybe like Jade Barron, who ran like a 4.4 or 4.39 or something, like proves he has top end speed. That can be huge for him. A guy like Armand Membu could be fighting for potentially tackle one off the board. I'm usually not a big fan of the combine just because I think it shoots some people up the board that just shouldn't go up. If you look at like Trayvon Walker a few years back, he's turned into a pretty decent player, and he was always going to be a pretty good player. But like number one overall, are we really being serious? Aiden Hutchinson is definitely a better player and should have deserved to go number one pretty easily, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, it kind of is what it is. It does have an impact, um, and it's going to make an impact on this mock draft. So let's get straight into it. At number one overall, I've got the Titans going Abdul Carter. Um, do they need quarterback? Yes. But can they address it in free agency? Yes. I think Darnold maybe might end up turning into a bit of a one-season wonder. He was in kind of a perfect situation in Minnesota, but he deserves the contract that he's going to get this offseason somewhere. Somebody's going to pay him upwards of $100 million. Almost certainly it'll be 3 years, $140 million, something like that. It'll be insane. Maybe 4 years. 4 years, $130 million, something around in that range. It's going to be unbelievable, but that's what happens when you have a pretty good year as a quarterback. At number two overall, we've got the Cleveland Browns. There's a couple different options you could go with here. I wouldn't mind quarterback. Cam Ward's available. However, I definitely would not mind going Travis Hunter either. Uh, I could definitely see that too. I'm gonna go Travis Hunter here at number two. Just trying to get better. He can help on offense and defense. I view him more as a wide receiver, but if he truly wants to play both, I mean, you can't deny that he's elite at both. Might be receiver and corner one in the draft. Giants at three are, to be honest, they're kind of in dreamland because Cam Ward just fell to number three and probably shouldn't have done. Patriots up next at number four. Are in a pretty interesting spot because, you know, the two guys they would really want, like maybe the two blue chippers, minus Ashton Genty, are, right here at 1 and 2. So it is a pretty bad spot for the Pats. This would kind of be like the worst possible situation. I would not touch Will Campbell at 4, just to be totally honest. It's just too early. Um, I actually prefer like Armand Membu. Um, higher up just because I think he's guaranteed to play a bit of tackle at first, at least. Will Campbell, I think more likely than not, with the arm measurements, sub 30-inch arms at the combine, is going to end up being more of a guard. So I'm going to look to trade back here, and it's going to be a team that wants a quarterback, and that's not the Raiders anymore, but it could definitely be the Jets. And I know it's an interdivision trade, so this probably won't happen. I'm just going to be honest. It probably will not happen. But if it does, the Pats are going to ask for a lot from the Jets. They really are, because you're moving up for a franchise quarterback within division. I mean, it's pretty unlikely that this happens, but I'm just kind of trying to explore different scenarios. The Giants would never move out of 3 with Cam Ward available. They would just take him. And then from this point on, it's kind of from looking for a trade target. Maybe more likely than not, the Jets trade up with the Jags, try to make something happen there. But maybe they wouldn't want to take the risk of, having Las Vegas pick ahead of them. There's a lot of different things that can happen here. But I'm just going to go 7, 42, 92, just straight up for number 4. Maybe even a second round next year, and you swap like a third next year or something like that for it. I don't know. But we're gonna knock that through. It takes a lot to move up for a quarterback, especially in divisions. That's what's gonna happen. and the Jets are going to hopefully, for their sake, get their quarterback of the future in Shador Sanders. Next up, we've got the Jags. Jags are another interesting team because they can use a lot of help on defense, right? And I've not ever really been the biggest fan of Will Johnson this year. He was obviously elite in years past, but this year he wasn't really my guy. I wouldn't take him at number 5, and I wouldn't take Jade Barron at number 5 either. I think it's too early for him, for a guy who's most likely just going to play nickel corner. So I'm just going to go Mason Graham. It's kind of playing it safe, but this is another one of those guys who's just pretty elite, in my opinion, in this draft. Uh, and there aren't like many like elite players, right? There's probably 3 or 4. Um, Next up, we've got the Raiders. Now they just made the big. I mean, maybe big move isn't like the craziest thing ever, but they swapped a 3rd round pick to get Geno. I want to see if they still. I actually don't know which 3rd round pick it was, but my guess, it doesn't impact this mock draft at all. I kind of want to like just make the trade happen though, like in this. Can't find the Seahawks. Let me just get a player. I kind of just want to knock it through just because I want it to be like kind of a realistic situation. I don't know. But either way, they just traded their 3rd round pick for Geno Smith. Geno is an interesting player because I think he's going to give you average / like above average quarterback play, which is huge, honestly. It's a big improvement off of what Las Vegas has had in the past few years. So, and he gets the link back up with Pete Carroll. That would probably mean you want to go out and get him a big weapon to start off. So that would leave you with Tetsuo McMillan, Luther Burden, and Matthew Golden, I think would be your options. Matthew Golden, like out of nowhere, ran a 4.29. Was just not expecting that at all. In all honesty, if he ran, his teammate Isaiah Bond ran a 4.4, right? And a lot of people thought he might break the record, or maybe not break the record, but would have a good time. He thought he'd break the record. If you flip their times, I wouldn't have batted an eye. Matthew Golden does not play at a 4.29, but he did run it. So I think they'll shoot him up boards like a lot more than maybe people would think. Saying that, I think 6 is crazy, to be honest. So I'd probably go Tetsuo McMillan just to get a big wide receiver, a true X, and then you have Jacoby Myers as your kind of slot or Z. But yeah, I think honestly Luther Burden might end up being the better player. But obviously everything depends on the system, and the Raiders don't really need a Luther Burden. They need more of a big outside guy in Tetsuo McMillan. Now you're starting to get like a really decent receiving core. You have Bowers in the slot, or can technically move to the outside too, but I prefer him in the slot. You've got Jacoby Myers, Tetsuo McMillan. You have a competent quarterback. Things are starting to turn around a little bit. Next up, we've got the Pats. This is probably where you go offensive line, and I'm gonna change things up a little bit. I haven't done a video in a while, but usually when I go O-line with the Pats, I go Will Campbell. I could totally see Will Campbell going here, but just to change things up, I'm going to go with Armand Membu. He's a freakishly athletic tackle out of Missouri. I've loved Armand Membu for a while. However, I'm a Patriots fan. I was thinking if you can trade back into the first to get him later, that would be great. But his value's just skyrocketed. I mean, people have caught on, teams have caught on, and he's going to go very, very early. Next up, we've got the Panthers. This could be maybe a Jade Barron spot, but I'm going to go and build that defensive line up a little bit more. And I'm going to go with James Pierce at number 8. He had a fantastic combine. There were some things coming up about his character potentially not being really what you want it to be. But in all honesty, I don't really care. If you're sacking the quarterback, you can be a cocky guy. Kind of is what it is. Saints up next. Uh, I think again, it's a defensive line spot. I could see maybe going going to receiver, like, but I'm not really on that right now. So I'm gonna go with Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M, another freak athlete. He had a great combine, had a great Senior Bowl. We're adding him to the Saints here. He's also one of those players that the Saints could really target. Just big athletic edge rusher. Next up, we got the Bears. I think we got two options. They just made a big move going out and getting Joe Tooney, and for not really that big of a price. It was like a fourth rounder next year. So what does that mean? Well, it means they probably, if you're going tackle or if you're going offensive line, you probably want like a tackle, right? You don't really want someone to bump inside to guard anymore. That would be Will Campbell. You know, he's most likely bumping into guard or center. So do you really want that? Or maybe you want to target something else. And then getting Joe Tooney was something kind of unexpected, and it's I mean it's massive. Like that is such a big addition for the Bears that changes kind of everything in their offseason. I think offensive line is obviously still a big priority, but is it like the biggest priority? I don't think so. I think you're looking either Genty or edge here. Um, if you're looking edge, I think Michael Williams' athleticism is probably something you're looking for. Mike Green, and again, just a crazy athlete off the edge. I like Kyle Kennard, but this is just too early. Um, so, your options are really Mike Green, Michael Williams, I think, at number 10. Or you could get a potentially blue chip back. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go with Ashton Genty here at number 10 and target offensive line in the second round. Now, that means Will Campbell falls into the 49ers' lap. I'm not really going to think twice about that pick. He's just going to play guard. And if they need him to, potentially he can bump out to left tackle or right tackle. But, maybe you're hoping he's the future replacement for Trent Williams. At number 12, we've got the Cowboys. Will Campbell would have been a decent option for them as well. But, saying that, I'm looking receiver here. And Luther Burden's available. I'm not really going to think twice about that. He's probably a top 10 talent in the draft, so getting him at 12 is just fantastic for them. Dolphins up next. This could be a spot where you see Jahdae Barron coming off the board. I would not mind that at all for them. But you also want to build that offensive line. You also want to help on defense, on the defensive line, I meant. So if we're looking here, the value isn't fantastic, but maybe you can grab a guy like Kelvin Banks to kind of help you out. If you look on defense, there's the guy who I'm going to pick here in Malachi Starks. You're losing Javon Holland, most likely. Like 99% you're losing him. Just go out, just replace him, right? I mean, Malachi Starks is fantastic. He can drop in, play a little bit of nickel, can play safety. Yeah, he can cover. He's a smart player. He doesn't make splash plays all the time, but he makes the plays you need to make, right? So I think it's a good spot for the Dolphins here at 13. Next up, I think we have a steal here with Tyler Warren going 14 to the Colts. This is my seventh, sixth best player in the draft. I love Tyler Warren. He's just a beast, man. I love tight ends. Tight ends are my favorite position in all of sports. I'm a big tight end guy. And yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't really have to say it anymore. I mean, he can block, he can run block, pass block, catch the ball. You can run routes. He's a fine route runner. He's got great hands. He can go up and make the catches you wouldn't expect anyone to make. It's a great player to, add to a team who's not the greatest ever, but you're starting to build around Anthony Richardson and give him some new weapons. Falcons up next. I'm going Jahdae Barron here. I'm going to try to help out in that secondary. He can play nickel, can play outside, can play a little bit of safety. I know that you need help on the edge desperately, but we're going with Jahdae Barron here. You also need corner help. You just do at the end of the day. Arizona Cardinals up next. Arizona Cardinals are an interesting team, but for me, it's got to be interior defensive line, and I'm going to go with Walter Nolan at 16. I'm not the biggest Walter Nolan fan in the world, to be honest, but he's got great athleticism. He's very, very tricky to stop through the middle. He's just a ridiculous athlete, man, and that's just kind of the end of it. Bengals up next. I mean, they are just so terrible on defense. They need a little bit of help off the edge. They need a little help in the middle. They need a little help in the back room. So, with a guy like Will Johnson still available, I'm gonna take him. He fell a little bit farther than maybe I anticipated. He could have potentially gone to the Falcons there at 15, but the Bengals are just so terrible on defense that anything will help. Getting a corner, of Will Johnson's ability, if he can play like he played 2 years ago, this is a top 5 pick in the draft, right? Next up, we've got the Seahawks. Now, the Seahawks are in such a weird spot. I mean, they got rid of Lockett. They released him. It looks like they're moving on from DK Metcalf. Um, it's such a weird spot for the Seahawks, to be honest. Um, and they traded their quarterback away. So it's a big question what they're going to do in the offseason, because I don't think any of these guys are first rounders or second rounders for that matter. I think Jackson Dart may be second round, but not ever at 18. I mean, if you're throwing a dart at Jackson Dart at 18, it truly is a dart throw. You don't know what you're getting from that. I would not touch him at 18. Just no chance. So you're really in a pretty interesting spot. You can even look receiver now, right? If you're losing so many guys here, it's a really, really weird spot for Seattle. And I'm gonna look honestly. I'm gonna look to move out here at pick 18. Um, so the question is, who would want to move up? Well, it's probably somebody that would want an edge rusher. So if just scanning down the board, I'm looking at the Chargers, because I was gonna say San Diego, not true, but yeah, I'm looking at the Chargers here. So we're gonna grab the Chargers. We're gonna send 22 and 86, 22 54, and then we'll send back 18 and 82. Send that through, and the Chargers are jumping Tampa for. Always forget he's a linebacker for Jalen Walker, right? Is he the best, player in the draft? No, but does he have some of the best potential in the draft? I think yes. I think 100%. And his character's great. And some of his interviews, I mean, just watch a Jalen Walker interview. Genuinely, it's, type of mentality you really want at your club, and he brings it. I really, really am a big fan of Jalen Walker, and he's a great athlete as well. Tampa, I think, would go with the second choice there, back to back. Jahad Campbell, linebacker out of Bama. However, I think he can easily play off the edge. He might even be better off the edge. So those two for me are honestly interchangeable. I think Jahad Campbell is definitely a better linebacker, like off ball, than Jalen Walker. But Campbell maybe, or Walker, sorry, has a slight advantage. Off the edge, he's played it more. But Jahad Campbell, I think, is a great pick for Tampa as well. He's a ridiculous athlete. Number 20, we've got the Broncos. Now I'm going to go with Colston Loveland here out of Michigan. Kind of receiver, tight end hybrid. He's a pretty big guy, but can easily play in the slot. He's a great route runner for a tight end. Has pretty safe hands. And just you're getting another weapon for Bo Nix, who had a pretty great year last year. Steelers at 21. I don't know what they're doing at quarterback either. I assume they would want to let Russell Wilson leave and bring in maybe Fields on another 1-year deal or something like that. Again, it's a spot, I'm not touching quarterback at all. Maybe, you probably look more at corner or on the interior of the offensive line, right? So at corner, you're looking Benjamin Morrison, Savon Ravel, Trey Amos. I wouldn't go Benjamin Morrison just because of the injury. Azariah Thomas. I wouldn't mind him either. it's an interesting spot, and of course Maxwell Harrison had a great combine, so that could push him up boards potentially. But I'm gonna actually try to improve the interior. I'm gonna go with Derek Harmon or Kenneth Grant. That's an interesting choice. But I'm gonna go with Kenneth Grant out of Michigan here to Pittsburgh. They just need help on the interior. They've got aging players, Cam Hayward, and you're trying to mix in some young talent as well. Now we're back with the Seahawks, and I'm realizing the reason I traded back earlier is just because I didn't want to make the pick. Right? I mean, this team is so hard to draft for, um, because any day of the week, any other day, I'm going Mike Green, and I'm not really thinking twice. But the problem is they need quarterback, they need receiver now, they need offensive line. There's just so much that they need. You can't address it all in one pick. You just can't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go Mike Green here. We're going to get in a very strong edge rusher. He had a great Senior Bowl. Mike Green is going to be a fantastic player for the Seahawks. I mean, he's a little bit raw, right? So you're taking a risk. He's not a guaranteed success. Almost nobody is, right? There's very few players in the draft that are guaranteed successes, right? If any. In this draft, I think there's about two, right? Mike Green is not a guaranteed success. However, what he's demonstrated is he can get to the quarterback. Was it at the highest level ever at Marshall? No. But was it at the highest level? Well, not the very highest level. Was that a much higher level at the Senior Bowl? Definitely. And he demonstrated his ability. He didn't even have to play the game. That's how well he did in the training. So I'm going to go with Mike Green. Next up, we've got Green Bay. I think this could be receiver. I think it could be corner. Me personally, I'm looking more at corner here, like a boundary corner. For that reason, I'm going with Maxwell Harris. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going with Savon Ravel. Didn't even mean to say Harrison. But Savon Ravel is one of these guys where the injury was really unlucky for him. There's like three corners that fit that profile. Injuries just absolutely killed him. It could go way higher than this. He's an absolute shutdown ball hawk corner. And I have no doubts that he will be a very solid player if he's able to stay healthy. Next up, we've got, and it's, of course, a risk, I guess, taking a guy from Carolina and putting him in Green Bay, but it is what it is. Minnesota up next. I think this is another corner spot, honestly, and I'm going to go with Maxwell Harrison out of Kentucky. Had a great combine. He's probably maybe a little bit, going a little too high here, but it kind of is what it is at the end of the day. Texans up next. They traded for Christian Kirk. The Jags made so many moves in one day that I honestly misread one of their things. I thought they cut Kirk, so I was so confused when a team traded for him, but it is what it is. So that means, otherwise I would have gone Matthew Golden here, probably, or Emeka Ibuka. However, I'm not going to be doing that. Instead, we're going to look to add to this offensive line. One of the greatest offensive linemen in this draft, I think, is Josh Simmons. Now, obviously, he had another injury setback, right? Or, he's another one of these guys that had an injury setback this year. It was a bad one. So I'm still gonna grab him. He's gonna play, potentially right tackle for you, but can easily bump inside to guard. Just a great way to make a young player's career easier, right? Is just playing them in the position that they're comfortable in. If he can play tackle, he can play guard. That's all we need at Houston. Next up, we've got the Rams. Now, this is another probably tackle spot for me. However, I could also see corner, but I'm not going to go corner. I'm going to go with Josh Connerly at Oregon. I'm a big Josh Connerly guy. Obviously, he got kind of unlucky. Well, not unlucky, I guess. It was, him doing it, but, got bull rushed by Mike Green at the Senior Bowl. Maybe not the greatest thing ever for a draft stock, but he's still a great player, and it was one rep. Next, we got Baltimore. They just made maybe their biggest offseason move, which well, it should be their biggest offseason move, is re-signing Ronnie Stanley. As a Patriots fan, it kind of pisses me off, but it is what it is. Um, the world probably won't end, but yeah, I mean he's such a good player. He got a deserved extension. It was like 3 years, 60 million, something in that range. So big contract. That bolsters the offensive line. I'm looking here at Donovan Azuruaku off the edge for the Ravens. He's just going to get to the quarterback. Crazy athlete. Another one of these guys who just, the production was on another level this year. Next, we've got the Lions. I'm going to go, not really think too long about this. I'm just going to go off the edge and grab Michael Williams. Uh, he's not my favorite player in the world, but at 28, I mean, it's great value. He could go in the top 10 just because of his potential, right, and his athleticism. So grabbing him at 28 is really nice. Really, really nice. Washington, don't know why their top need is receiver. I probably would not say that. But Washington just made the move for Debo. I don't think Debo is really at the top of his game anymore, obviously. Everybody knows that. But he's still a nice little weapon to add to that team, who's becoming a little bit more interesting. Probably going offensive line here, just to protect Jaden Daniels. So I'm just going to run with Kelvin Banks. You know, he can play left tackle for you, can bump inside the guard, can really do whatever you need on the offensive line. I wouldn't play him center, but you can play him guard, you can play him tackle on either side, and be very comfortable with it. Bills at 30. There's two receivers here that shouldn't be here at this point. And it's Matthew Golden and Emeka Ibuka. I'm going to go with Matthew Golden here. Looks like they're losing Amari Cooper. Just grab another receiver one, right? This year you're getting the Texas receiver. The Chiefs are not. Also, something happened with Xavier Worthy. I don't even know what it is. I'm not really going to go into it. Maybe that plays into their draft. Maybe they look receiver. I don't think it should change too much, but it might. But for the Chiefs, it kind of has to be offensive line, in all honesty. And I'm going Gray Zabel. He's going to play on the interior for you. He's going to replace Joe Tooney. But, maybe, obviously they're going to be, in the top 5 teams, for favorites for the Super Bowl next year. But maybe we're looking at kind of the end of that Chiefs window. This is probably Kelsey's last year. Their offensive line's kind of deteriorating a little bit with Joe Tooney leaving. They had to tag Trey Smith. This could be the end of that little window. They're going to have to start re-signing, players on rookie contracts. They're not going to have the money for it because they're paying Mahomes, obviously, a ton of money. So you never know, but you got to start building through the youth in that offensive line. And Gray Zabel's about as sturdy as you're going to get for a rookie offensive lineman. Next up, we've got Philly. Again, it's an interesting spot, right? Because they won the Super Bowl. They're an unreal team. They're hard to draft for. You can look potentially on the offensive line. That's probably what I'm going to do. Assuming Becton leaves, if you can grab a guy like Tyler Booker at 32, I mean, you're in dreamland for Philly. I mean, that is a ridiculous spot to get Tyler Booker. His value isn't immense because he's a guard and probably only a guard. But, I mean, he's so good. He's in my top 20 players easily, right? He's a great player. Now, entering round 2, I'm going to start having to go back to the top to remember just who I picked, right? So the Browns are here. They went Travis Hunter in the first. Maybe you can look receiver. Maybe you can look to grab, there's so many guys here that kind of fell out of the first. Like Nick Scourton at 33, that's a really good pick. That is a really, really good pick. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go Nick Scourton here. At number 33, right? He's what I would think would be a first-round lock, and then he falls out. So you never really know. Same with Emeka Ibuka, Derek Harmon. I think these are all first-round guys. Giants up next. They went with Cam Ward in the first round. They already have Malik Neighbors, but you can add to that room. You can grab, Emeka Ibuka to be a receiver too. Um, that's what I'm gonna do. Emeka Ibuka's never really been a receiver one, so if you can bring him in with the expectations of a receiver too, I'm sure he'll thrive. He's a sure-handed receiver. I think he'll do a pretty good job for him. And then you're starting to build a little decent something there because your Giant in New York, the Giants have a great front seven, right? Definitely a great defensive line. Maybe the linebacking core isn't elite, but decent, front 3 or 4. Then you've got Cam Ward, Emeka Ibuka, Malik Neighbors. You're starting to put something together. Titans here. This was kind of assuming, right, that they were going with Sam Darnold at quarterback. So you're probably going to need some help on the offensive line. That right side of the line was just not great. So I'm going to do something here that maybe not everyone will agree with, but I'm going to go with Ozzie Trapilo out of Boston College. He's just a behemoth of a man, right? He's like 6'7" at right tackle. You're not going to have to move him. He's not one of those guys where you're concerned, with size, he's going to have to move inside. Like, no, he's got the length. He's got, the build. This can be your right tackle for the next 10 years if you really want him to be, if you can develop him correctly. This is one of my favorite players in the draft. And it's not just because he has a cool name. It's because he's a genuinely very good player. Next up, we've got the Jags. Now, in the first round, the Jags went with Mason Graham. The second round, they're kind of getting rid of everyone on offense, right? Maybe it's not a bad idea to bring in another receiver. Now, of course, who's that receiver going to be? It's not a bad question. I don't really love anybody here on the board to go this high. I do, however, like Trey Harris a lot. But he just doesn't really fit because he kind of would do what Brian Thomas Jr. does already. Like, that would be the role. Maybe it's not exactly what he'd play, but it'd definitely be the role he would play. So, not going to go with him. We already went Mason Graham. Derek Harmon's still available. Do you double up? Maybe that's a genuine thing. Maybe you look to move back, right? So that's actually what I'm going to do. I'm going to move back. I'm going to have who trading up? I'm going to have the Patriots trade up. And I'm going to do something a little bit creative here, I think. I'm going to have the Patriots move up. It doesn't have to be that much. It can literally be, it's moving up 2 spots. It can be pick 140 and you get 180 back or something like that. Or maybe, we'll do 190. Send this through. The Patriots are going to go out and take Amarion Hampton and link up Amarion Hampton back with Drake May, right? So you have familiarity there. And then on top of that, Ramondre Stevenson was clearly losing a little bit of power last year. You bring in just a quality running back with first-round talent, 100% first-round talent. This is one of those guys that I think can't miss, to be honest. I think he's an elite talent that could easily go in the top, 15. If the Cowboys wanted them at 12, I wouldn't really be that surprised. Next up, we've got the Raiders. Now, in the first round, the Raiders went with Tetairoa McMillan. Remember, they have their quarterback in Geno Smith. So now what do? You look to probably build that offense even a little bit more with a running back, but Amarion Hampton's gone. So you would look maybe to Caleb Johnson would be the next best, maybe Dylan Sampson. Or you look to build that back room. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go with Trey Amos here out of Ole Miss. Now we've got the Jags again. I'm going to go corner again. And I'm going to go with Azarai Thomas out of Florida State. Now we've got the Bears. Bears are interesting, right? Because the Bears definitely need help on the offensive line. In the first round, we went with Genty because of the Joe Thuney pickup, so I didn't think it was the biggest priority in the world. They have 2 picks here in the second round. I think one of them needs to be edge. I think one of them needs to be offensive line. If you're looking at who's picking right after you, it's the Saints. The Saints addressed edge earlier and could also use O-line. So I'd go offensive line first, okay? And I'm going to look to pick up Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State. I think he's one of the better offensive linemen in this draft. Can play tackle for you right away, or he can bump inside to guard. So, it's another flexible one. But I'm trying him at tackle first. I think he did a good enough job at tackle at Ohio State, playing in an unnatural position to him, to be able to hopefully try to stick him at tackle in the NFL. And if it doesn't work, you play him at guard, and he's a great guard. Next up, we've got the Saints. I'm honestly just going to double up on defensive line because Derek Harmon should just never fall this far. At the end of the day, he just shouldn't. Shouldn't really have let that happen, but he falls so far here. And really, a lot of the defensive interiors do, right? Tyleik Williams, TJ Sanders, Shamar Turner, Omar Norman Lott, even Darius Alexander, right? I do not think he's really 23 in all honesty, but is what it is. The Saints absolutely bolster their defensive line. That is looking very good now. You get Shamar Stewart and Derek Harmon. Bears up next. For me, this is, we're looking on that defensive line again. Could look Landon Jackson. Wouldn't mind that one bit. However, maybe not, Maybe I just really just stick with Landon Jackson. He's a freak athlete. He had a funny little video of the drill come out of where you have to smack the pad out of the way. He had a funny video of that come out a few years ago where he looks like an idiot, but now he's doing the drill and he looks like obviously a pro. He's redone his technique, worked on his technique and has become a bit of a really, really, really good player. And he's a massive dude. Next up, we have the Pats. And the Pats are interesting because I think what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to make a pick. I'm going to trade it, and I'm going to do something a little crazy because I don't really do this in these videos because I don't, I don't really trade for like a player. But I'm satisfied with what the Patriots have done in these first two rounds, right? They grabbed a running back. They grabbed, Arma Membu, the lineman. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trade for DK Metcalf, who's on the trading block. I'm going to go 42 and 77 and a fifth rounder next year for DK Metcalf and maybe, I don't know, a fourth rounder next year. And we're going to just ship that through. I think that's a good trade on both ends. It's the Seahawks, they were asking for like a first and a third rounder. I'll be honest, they are never getting they're just never getting that. Let's be so real. They're never getting a first and a third rounder. A high second and a third rounder, that could definitely happen, with late, pick exchanges. So that's what we're going to do. Seahawks fans get an extra pick. Looks like DK's on the way out. So Patriots get exactly what they need. Seahawks get another pick here. And with that pick, maybe you're looking for Sam Darnold, but in this thing, I kind of built this around the Titans picking him up, right? So maybe you don't do that. And I'm going to go with Jackson Dart at pick number 42. Is it the greatest pick in the world? Maybe not. But do you need quarterback? 100% yes, you need quarterback. You need receiver, right? I mean, the Seahawks are all over the place, but now you've addressed edge rusher, you've addressed quarterback, and you're starting to build, this team up again, but younger, So that's what we're looking for. San Fran up next. Going to try to speed through the rest of these for the most part. I don't think I'm going to do any more trades. San Fran, earlier they went with Will Campbell, right? So here you're probably looking edge or just interior, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go with TJ Sanders out of South Carolina. No need really to explain. You need help on the defensive line. TJ Sanders does just that. Maybe you can even pick up Joey Bosa. He just got cut by the Chargers, and you can link him up with with his brother on the other side, and then you have TJ Sanders in the middle. It's not a bad team there. Cowboys earlier went with Luther Burden. Here, I'm going to go with Caleb Johnson. I think he's easily RB3 in this draft. But, Dylan Sampson's up there with him. But Cowboys need running back. Caleb Johnson is a fantastic running back. Colts up next. We're going defensive line again. Or are we? No, we're going defensive back. I'm going to go Benjamin Morrison. Benjamin Morrison, if he works out, is an absolute steal at 45, by the way. Got unlucky with injuries. Easily a top 10 talent in the draft. Without those injuries. My throat is starting to get mad dry. Gotta keep hydrated, man. Next up, we have the Falcons. Earlier, they went defensive back. Here, we're going to go edge. And I'm going to grab Princely Umanmielen. Another guy who's probably a first-round talent. Has some character issues. Likes to fight people sometimes. But at the end of the day, it's what I said earlier for James Pierce. I don't care if you're cocky if you get to the quarterback, right? And that's what you need them to do. Cardinals went with Walter Nolan earlier. I'm going to bolster the line again. And I'm going to get Kyle Kennard to play off the edge. Now you're starting to build something really, really nice there on the defensive line in Arizona. Now we have the Dolphins. Dolphins are interesting. I'm going to go on the defensive interior here. We got Malachi Starks earlier. We'll go with Darius Alexander now. He had a great Senior Bowl. Another one of those Toledo guys that has a fantastic Senior Bowl. And he shot himself up the board. I don't think he's any higher than like 45, but who knows what's going to happen. Pick 49, we've got the Bengals. Earlier, the Bengals addressed what? It's the secondary. So here, you're going to be able to pick up, one of the better value picks in the entire draft with Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State on the interior of that defensive line. And now you're starting to put it together there. And then the Seahawks, here again, Seahawks have a lot of picks here. They have 3 second-round picks. So this might end up being like one of the weirder drafts I've ever done for a specific team. Seahawks are going a little crazy. I know I have a lot of Seahawks fans that watch this, so they comment more than anybody else. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it, but I can understand if you don't want to get rid of DK or something like that. Either way, and they also would have acquired a 3rd-round pick here, so they really would be able to build through this draft, which is a pretty deep, has some depth, some nice positions for them. So far for the Seahawks, just to rewind, we've gone Jackson Dart and we've gone Mike Green. So next up, I think you got to address the offensive line, right? However, saying that, there's a guy here that I think you could have picked in the 1st round, and that's Nick Eamon-Wari. And at pick 50, he cannot fall any farther. He's a top 25 player in the draft for me. I love his athleticism. Reminds me of name's not coming to my mind, but the Chargers safety, the elite Chargers safety that's probably the best safety in the league. I can't remember his name because these videos drive me insane sometimes. But either way, it reminds me of him. And he's an elite safety, right? Elite safety. Next up, we've got Tampa. This for me is corner, and I'm just going to go and grab. There's a couple options, to be fair. There's a couple options. I'm going to go Darian Porter out of Ohio State. Iowa State. He ran really well at the combine, and that's always going to improve your draft stock as a corner. Next up, we have the Broncos. Could see, honestly, DKJ here. The main man, Demetrius Knight Jr. Could see them going linebacker. They went Colson Loveland in the 1st. I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to go with Demetrius Knight Jr. There's something about sometimes when you're looking at a player, he just looks like he's going to be a good player. You know what I mean? When I was watching the Senior Bowl game and the practices, and you see this guy, and he's just like, he just looks like a pro. You know what I mean? He just plays like a pro. That's one of these guys, right? It's that whole South Carolina uh, defensive front. They are all like that. It's insane. All right, Pittsburgh up next. Earlier, they went with Kenneth Grant. Now we're gonna go corner. And I'm gonna go with Kobe Bryant. Uh, there's another Kobe Bryant who plays for the Seahawks, and there's this one Kobe Bryant who I don't know. What does he play? Golf or something like that? That's a joke, by the way. I'm not that stupid. Um, Either way, Kobe Bryant had a fantastic Shrine Bowl. He looked really locked down. You know, in the one-on-one drills, those cornerbacks are at a pretty big disadvantage. It's kind of those drills are kind of made for a receiver to thrive. So when you are able to shut them down consistently, I mean that's huge, right? So a guy like Kobe Bryant, I'm just showing him a bit of love here, going at 53. Uh, that's what we're gonna do. Seahawks up again. Now you have to go on the offensive line because you have waited too long, right? Have to go offensive line. Ariante Ursary is still available. Don't think twice, right? Grab Ariante Ursary at 54. Um, he's fallen down boards recently, but I still like him there at 54. Green Bay up next. We're going to look to improve the interior of the defensive line. I'm going to go with Alfred Collins out of Texas, right? Really nice athlete. Can fill the space nicely. Like him a lot. Next up, we've got the Bills. They just signed Greg Rousseau the other day, by the way. I'm also going to go interior here. I'm going to go with Dion Walker. No, I'm not. I'm going to go with Omar Norman Lott. I'm going to go with a really good athlete, Omar Norman Lott. Earlier in the first round, they went with Matthew Golden. Okay, good. I just want to make sure I didn't double up. That would have been pretty bad. Would have been pretty bad. Either way, is what it is. Next up, we've got the Texans. Earlier, they went with Josh Simmons. Okay, so here we're going to look. We could look offensive line again, maybe. I'm actually going to. I'm going to go offensive line again. And I'm going to go Cam Williams. We're going to keep him in Texas. So we actually took the who did I take? Oh, I took him with Washington. I was going to say we got the 2 Texas tackles, but we didn't. I'm going to go Cam Williams here. Keep him in Texas. He's a raw talent. So this guy probably isn't starting right away, unlike Josh Simmons, but he can easily kick in to guard if need be, right? Next up, we've got Carolina. This, for me, I went with James Pierce earlier. Yeah, it's gotta be defensive back here. The corners are kind of flying off the board. It's probably not a corner spot anymore, but it definitely could be a safety spot with a guy like Xavier Watts. You know, you can come in, you can play linebacker a little bit, but over the top, he's honestly just as good, and he's got a really nice build for a safety. Reminds me of, if you know, Marte Mapu for New England. That's exactly what he's like, in my opinion. Next up, we've got Baltimore. Earlier, they went with Donovan Azuruaku. Now I think you can maybe even look receiver. Alec Iomaner is who I'm going to go with. He's a really big outside guy who, can make some catches you wouldn't expect him to make. He absolutely tore apart Travis Hunter a few years back. So now he's he's heading over to Baltimore. Next up, we've got Detroit. Earlier, they went with Michael Williams. Okay. So now we're going to look to upgrade the offensive line. I'm going to go with Jared Wilson out of Georgia. He had an incredible combine. You know, he ran like a 4.84 40 at like 300, 20 pounds or whatever he is, maybe even heavier. That's incredible. And you know that Detroit loves their athletes. This is a great time to pick up Jared Wilson. Now we've got Washington. Earlier we went tackle with Kelvin Banks. Now I'm going to look to improve what am I doing? The edge room here. And I'm going to go with JT Tuimoloau out of Ohio State. You know, he's really, really nice athlete. Again, I say that a million times for, This is a draft full of athletes. It just is. Next, we've got the Bills. I'm going to go corner. I keep saying that and then look at the corners and I don't love them. But I'm still going to go corner, to be honest with you. Um, I don't love the guys available, but Zy Alexander is, he's a good guy to go for here. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go with Zy Alexander. It was between him and Quincy Riley for me, who also had a great uh, Senior Bowl, I believe, or Shrine Bowl. Honestly, forgot which one he was at, but is what it is. Zy Alexander here to the Bills. Kyer Elam is a guy who's just in no man's land all the time. He's got a big confidence issue. Just bring in another corner. I mean, it absolutely killed him when Kyer Elam had to come into the game. Chiefs up next. They went with Gray Zabel earlier. Now, you're in a spot maybe where you double up. You really do kind of have to. You could go offensive line again. A guy like Wyatt Milam still available. Play him at guard. Now you have two. Well, you already have Trey Smith though, so it probably wouldn't be him at all. It would probably, unless you played him at center. Not Trey Smith, but unless you played Wyatt Milam at center. I'm gonna go with Anthony Belton out of North Carolina. Anthony Belton. He's another guy who's just really big. He's kind of maybe more of a third rounder, but late second. What do you want? You got to take the guy you want. So I'm going to go with Anthony Belton out of North Carolina. He's more of a developmental guy. I know the Chiefs don't really need that right now. They need guys who can play right away and protect Mahomes, but it kind of is what it is. You got to do what you got to do, and if you're going to build that offensive lineup, you're going to have to do it somehow. And then the Eagles, to close out this mock, went with Tyler Booker in the first round to build that offensive lineup. Now you're probably looking to go edge just because, or corner. Darius Slay just left. You're probably looking to go edge. Maybe if you don't get Sweat back. Question is who would you go with? I'm a huge fan of Braden Swinson. I think he was very underrated until pretty recently on this board. He was very low. I've always been a big fan of Braden Swinson. He had a really good off season as well to kind of shoot his draft stock up. Could look to go that way. You can't really go corner because there's no one really available. Maybe Quincy Riley, and you look to develop him. He had a great Senior Bowl. He had a poor, not a poor year. He had an underwhelming year, but he had a great senior. I can't remember if it was senior or Shrine, in all honesty, but had a great off season. So you could look to go him. But you know what? I'm just gonna go with edge here. We're gonna grab a guy. I'm going to grab Kamen Rucker out of North Carolina. And the reason why is because he is a edge rusher that can also kind of play, not just off-ball linebacker, but he can drop into coverage, right? And this Eagles defensive line that's already unreal. You're just adding more dimensions to it, right? A guy that can drop back into coverage, a guy that can blitz, quality edge rusher. And that's going to do it for today's video. So if you like the video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.